All right, if you're a club player and you're a Caro-Kann player, this is the video for you. We're going to look at a really common idea that you see lots and lots and lots at the club level. Never really gets covered in any of the opening books because masters just don't really play it, but it's super common and it makes a lot of sense. So let's go ahead and dive in. As always, if you check out the description, I have a link to the PGN, full written analysis, more than I can cover in the video. Go ahead and check it out. All right, so we got this position in front of us. This is black to move, and we can see this is a situation where white has come out with their bishop to b5, has traded here, and we've resulted in this position. So let's break it down just a little bit. One, we have this super nice knight on f5. We have an exposed king on the king side, and our bishop is doing a good job of controlling the c file, and our queen is holding down the fort for what looks like this backwards pawn, and this knight looks pretty awesome here. So this is a kind of position that you're pretty likely to get if you play this situation where white exchanges their bishop on c6. So here, though, we do have a really kind of a cute tactic. We can play bishop takes, and if they play the most natural looking rook takes, we actually have a killer blow. Just queen takes f1, and after takes, we take here, and we're going to pick the queen back up with a piece to spare, and a rook for that matter, all kinds of stuff. So let's jump back to the beginning and look at how do we get here for something like this? Like, how do you get this kind of a position in your own game? All right, so we'll jump all the way back and we get this Caro-Kann. And we always play the C5 idea in the ChessGoals Caro-Kann course. Be sure to check it out. I've had a lot of success with this. It's a lot less common than the bishop f5 maneuvers. And I feel like that white is just generally less prepared. And I'm scoring really, really well in this. So C5 immediately strikes at the center. And then this really common move c3, which is not the best and not something you'll see at a master level, but you're going to see it at the club level all the time. We play knight c6, just continuing to put pressure on this d4 pawn, which is our big idea. The knight comes out, captures, and then we come out with this pin. And this way, this is the big advantage of playing this c5 early is we get our bishop out, and we also get the c5 move into strike at the center, and this bishop is going to come out and attack this knight, so that indirectly we're attacking d4. All right, so this is the key move that I wanted to cover here, this bishop to b5. It's supernatural because it attacks this knight, which is attacking this pawn, but really, the bishop belongs back here on d3. This structure that white has suggests a kingside attack, and the bishop being on b5 just isn't that. It really belongs back here. So this is a weaker move, definitely, but it's not that easy to know what to do against it. In the past, I've always quickly rushed a rook over or the queen, and I didn't want to allow this backward c pawn because I thought that meant that I had a weak pawn on the c file, and it meant that eventually I would have to play c5 and liquidate the pawn here, and I didn't really want to do that. So e6 is definitely the better way to play. We should not be afraid of this capture here. One, it's a waste of time from white. They get rid of their light squared bishop, meaning our whole king is going to be much, much safer. And we're going to look at how to handle this. Knight to c3. We just continue to develop naturally. And we're just continuing to pile general pressure on this d4 square. And eventually white captures. It's the whole point. It's why they brought here. It's how they defend this pawn. But now we can take back the b pawn. And this solidifies our d pawn. And we still have two main breaks now. We can go for f6 or we can go for c5. And just a quick side note. Let's say just a random move, and we play c5. This is no good here because this check is pretty obnoxious. Just say captures, captures. Actually, this pawn structure is pretty good for us. Ignore the fact that this check is devastating. Ignore that. We're just talking about the structure. We have this pass protected pawn. White does not have a pass protected pawn. Maybe they're going to be able to make a protected, or not a protected, but maybe they'll make a pass pawn at some point, but that's a long ways away. And this pawn, in like 20 to 30 moves, will march up the board and win the game for us. Whereas these guys are much, much less stable, and we can generally just try to put pressure on and attack them. So this is not a structure we're worried about. It was definitely a structure I was worried about. I was super afraid of this queenside majority here. But instead, a3 is kind of a silly move. Bishop to e3 was what was played in this game. And I played queen to b6. And the point is that I want to try to play c5, but I need to do it at a time when this is not a problem. And the queen on b6 does add some pressure here against b2. It also adds pressure against d4. It supports the d4. And more importantly, it kind of prepares to put the queen on a nice square that defends this and touches the king side and the queen side all at the same time. So knight a4 is the most common way that people reply here, and we play queen to b5. Just keeping a touch with the c5 square, because the last thing that we want is a situation where this knight is totally solidified on this square here. And if that happens, this is definitely a bad pawn for us. But if we play energetically, we can prevent that from happening. So b3 is solidifying the knight there. If you immediately tried to jump into c4, well, we can just grab it now. And when you take, we can eventually be able to take on e3, and we'll get this pawn, or maybe we'll get this pawn. You're going to cost you a pawn to go there right now. So b3 is played, but this weakens a lot of these dark squares, which I feel pretty good about, and it's going to give us some nice options with our dark squared bishop. So knight to h4, this is a really key idea that we need to keep in mind. It's one of the reasons why we have this pin here, is that we're always threatening this knight to h4, and there's just nothing that white can do to prevent us from messing up their king side. This is really a key idea that you need to keep in mind. It happens especially when this bishop has traded off, because he's got no way to break this pin here, and this king side is just going to get permanently shattered. So rook to c1, continuing to pile up pressure, but now we get to develop our bishop with tempi. So rook to c3 was played. Rook to c2 is probably more, not probably, it just flat is more accurate. The thing with rook to c3, and this is an idea that I missed, is that we actually have bishop to b4, and we're just winning in exchange now. So you can go here or you can go here. It doesn't matter. The point is that we can capture this knight, and after you take back, we just have bishop to h3, and we're hitting this square. Our other bishop is covering this square, and we're winning a clean exchange for nada. So this is a really nice idea to keep in mind, something that I was vaguely aware of, but I wasn't aware of it from the h3 square. I've seen some lines where we are able to win an exchange this way, but it didn't seem possible in this line because, you can kind of run out of the way. But keeping in mind this bishop h3 tactic is a really nice idea. So instead, rook to c3 is played, and I played the more common move, which is to take with the bishop. That's generally the way that we're going to capture here if we don't have this ability to win an exchange. And the point is that after takes, we're going to be able to plant this knight back on f5 later, and we'll be able to play f6, and this king side is totally exposed, and this knight is setting beautifully on f5. It's untouchable. It defends the g7 square. It continues to attack on d4. This is just a really fantastic knight. So here it is castled. My opponent played f4, and I played f6 immediately. I could have dropped the knight back, and maybe that makes more sense. But queen g4 happens, and I drop back now, and we're already seeing that this knight is doing a good job blocking the e6 square, defending this guy. It's touching this bishop. It means that a rook can't land on g3, and even if it does, it doesn't matter because we're defending g7. So knight to c5 now. And here I had a little bit of a panic moment. Now, if I had played the better f takes, we would have arrived at the position that I showed in the intro to the video. After f takes, we have that nice fork that we saw, which this idea came up in the game, and I saw it, but not in this exact iteration, because I was mostly worried about after I take on e5, what happens after knight takes? And here I didn't see the best idea. It's just rook to f6. And the point is, one, if you move your knight back, well, I can just play e takes d4, and this is a fork. You can't just move your knight back. So instead, you have to rely on capture, or, yeah, just capturing the pawn is really the only thing that they got going on. Because we'll take here, you'll take this guy, but then we have this check, which is really nice. You can't move your king because this rook hangs, so you've really got to block with the bishop. But now we have h6, and, sorry, not h6 immediately. We got to prepare that. First, we give this check, kicking this queen out of the way. It's got to stay in touch with the bishop. The only way to do that is here. And now h6. And after something like here, takes, we can play c5, making sure that the rook has an escape route or the queen can come defend. And we are up just a clean piece now. So this would have definitely been a lot nicer way to have seen this. Instead, I played rook to a to e8, which is not so good because knight d7 happens. And I thought I'm losing exchange here, but it turns out I'm not. I played f takes e5, which earned me the double exclam brilliant move, which I was super excited about. The point is we're not actually losing exchange. It seems like it, but we're not because, well, if you take here immediately, well, I have rook takes, and then if you grab here, I have this bishop b2, and it's going to transpose to basically what happened in the game. Sorry, d4 here. Always d4 here. I'm getting my lines backwards. I apologize. So this was played, and now I played this bishop to b2. And the point is if you try to win the exchange, well, you don't, because I can just capture here, and you've got no good place to put this rook that's safe. You can't come here. You obviously can't come here. And coming to c2 is actually not so good either, because remember, we have this idea again. When you can't capture because of this, and we're forking everything now. Here, my opponent played rook back to c1, trying to defend this rook, and I gladly swoop back the exchange. So bishop takes, but now I brought this queen in, and d4 is really tough to defend now. You can't bring the bishop back because I'll just take it, and then I'll mate here. And this whole queen side looks weak. This looks weak. Your king side is not particularly strong, and you have no way to generate threats. This rook is stuck here passively. This bishop has really nothing to do. So he tries to play rook to d1, but I'm just going to keep my queen in here, and I'm surely going to win some of these pawns eventually. Bishop to g5, doesn't matter, doesn't do anything. I'm just going to go munching on pawns. Defended this guy, probably didn't actually need to. Maybe I could have defended it this way, or done something, maybe even taking here is an option, although that seems unnecessarily complicated. So I brought the rook across. He tries to advance, but I'm just going to bring my pieces in and just continue winning pawns. Now I'm up 2 pawns. This guy's a passer. And yeah, you're putting some threats against G7, but nothing real. And in fact, I was slightly concerned about bishop 8-6, which I don't really need to be, but I brought the queen back anyway, just in case. So bishop g5, doesn't matter. I'll move out of the way. h4 still doesn't matter. I get my rook involved. I'm going to come up here. Finally played the c5 maneuver. Finally got this pass pawn we were talking about. And h4. And again, this is nice because you can't really stick out of the way. And I'm threatening now to play h6, kick the bishop away from this square, and then give this check. Super, super difficult to meet. h3, and now the bishop comes here. I thought this was clever. But I just moved the king out of the way, so I actually am sort of threatening to take now. But he brings the queen in, which means that if I take, this is mate. But I can cover that. I just played queen to f7. And here he kind of threw in the towel, resigned sort of actively. Rather than pressing the resign button, just came in here, and we won a nice game. Anyhow, I thought this was a really nice example of handling this position with some cool tactical ideas that you're probably going to want to be aware of. But yeah, always, take a look right here. There'll be a playlist if you want to learn more about the Caro-Kann, especially this advanced line. I think it'll be a lot. You'll get a lot out of it. Super rewarding. I really enjoy this system, and I think you guys will too. All right, cheers.